Assalamu alaikum, and I welcome you all to another very exciting page of the Lime Green Journal. A brief information about this venture. Lime Green Visual Art Space is excited to present a series of talks titled as the Lime Green Journal, which tells stories of creative journeys, cultural and conceptual exchange, and artistic cross-fertilization, where we converse and explore the fascinating minds of creative people. We hope to inspire curiosity, ignite your imagination, and provoke new ways of thinking about the world. For this feature, our guest is Daria Filardo, an art historian, educator, and an independent curator based in Florence, Italy. She is the academic coordinator of the arts department and the curatorial practice and arts management master course IET, Florence, Italy. She is a founder of Counter Production Summer School of Contemporary Art with Stefania Galegati and David Ricco in Palermo, Italy. Her work as a curator started in 1998 to 2000 at the public museum Palazzo delle Papesse Contemporary Art Center in Siena. From 2001, she served as a freelance curator collaborating with public institutions such as GNAM, Roma, Biennale di Venezia, Gal-leria dell'Accademia in Firenze, Villa Romana in Florence, among others, and private ones such as Città, dell'arte, Fondazione Pistoletto, Manifesta Biennal, care of DOCVA in Milan, Tenuta, dello, Scompiglio, Tusciaelecta. She gives public lectures and is interested in long-term curatorial and educational projects. The projects are articulated in writing, exhibition making, and collective activities. Her approach is critical and aware of the context and in constant tension towards dialogue.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Alina, for having me.
Daria, I'm so grateful for having this memorable talk with you. Thank you for being a part of this venture.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the invitation, and I really appreciate what you are doing in your studio research space and exploration of creative practice broadly, not just the artist, because I'm not an artist, so it's hard to say that I'm, my creative process, it's a bit different from yours, but it's very interesting to share that.
I was giving the introduction and I forgot a very important part of it, which is very close to my heart. And I always tell everyone who I know that Daria has been my mentor and my closest friend and my guidance, my guiding star during my master's program in Florence, Italy. And she's a big force behind all the explorations and revelations of my life during those 2 amazing years of my life. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alina. The exchange with you has been absolutely wonderful. It really is. I feed myself from the dialogue and the different experience that I can have. And sharing with you it's still, I can see a drawing behind you.
Yes, do you remember this? I've put it purposely and intentionally because I remember when you walked into my studio and I had this drawing, it blew you away because it was something so expressive, and all the conversations that we've had, it sort of combined in this drawing of mine.
Yeah,
it's the first one. So I would like to begin by asking, is there a defining moment when you realize you should spend your life for art research and exploration practice? And you could go back to your earlier days,
Yes, actually there is. And it's a moment that goes back to my, I think I was maybe in junior high, and I was holding my little cousin. She was like 8 on my lap. She was drawing, and I was, kind of babysitting. And she was drawing, a children's drawing. And I kind of saw all those lines kind of expanding in the space. And I had a deep understanding of space with a real pleasure. So I didn't understand anything at that time. But when I was in high school and I got interest in art as a language, as a language of forms that always stays open and that talks to me in a way that I can never translate with words. There I understood that this is what I wanted to do, work with artists. I didn't know back then that there was a profession called curator. So to work with artists and mix words and images somehow to build knowledge together. But, my childhood and this experience with my little cousin kind of gave the spark to the world of forms.
Mm-hmm. So what is your creative process like? Is it super solitary? Is it collaborative? Do you enjoy?
Collaborative.
It's collaborative?
Yes. Well, it's both. It's collaborative because it sparks from relation. I think relations are the base on which, and the exchange is the base on which I create my ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's solitary, obviously, because many of the ideas just come to my mind also when I'm alone, when I'm walking, when I'm reading, when I'm doing something else, when I'm really busy doing something else, and something really solidifies and takes form.
So in order to develop art reading or art exploration or art practice or curatorial practice, there has to be a set method of creating a language. And one of the most important tools to develop that language is to observe. So what is it that you enjoy observing the most when you're doing your research, when you're thinking about an idea? Is it Daria walking down the street and observing people? Is it Daria enjoying people in a classroom or in a setting, or does she enjoy observing herself, her own patterns? What is that creative process like?
Let's say that the main theme that I've been exploring all my curatorial life, and the more I go on, the more I understand that this is a big red line that crosses many of my projects, is the intersection between art and life.
Mm-hmm.
So I observe life. I don't think there is this clear distinction. I don't think that art happens in a separate space. So my creative process happens when life happens, walking for me, I usually walk to the place. I like to walk a lot. So walking for me is very interesting. I really look around myself. The people are epiphanies, no, of
Mm-hmm.
many of the threads of things. I listen to the radio walking a lot of the time, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in what happens in around me, in the world, the crisis that we live, the historical intersection that we are. And so I would say that I observe people, and through the relations with people, artists and not artists, I build my curatorial ideas.
And I think in my experience, one of the most important gifts that you have given me was the gift of listening to the practice of another creative person. Do you think that is also something that defines your practice, that you observe and then you also listen? Because when you have headphones and you're listening to the news or the radio channel, you're listening attentively and you're listening with sharp attention, right? So do you think that's a very important aspect of one's creative process?
I do, yes, I do, and essential, very, very essential. Also because the work of a curator doesn't exist without the artist. It's a very creative work, but needs to be in deep contact with the practice of artists that, that they create the project together. So the visual language of the artist goes hand in hand with the concept and the ideas that the curators want to bring in. So it's a collective effort of putting together a very different way of thinking. One, it's visual, through the art practice. The other, the curator, is the one that puts together the experience of the art exhibition, which may expand in so many different possibilities. And so listening is the first quality. If I wouldn't be able to listen, I couldn't understand the other's practice and couldn't put it together and tie the lines of many artists to create, a single very delicate organism, which is the exhibition.
Does it not exhaust you? All the
Yes.
observation, all the listening, all the absorbing, because
Yes.
it's a very, very challenging task to do, to curate someone's project, to curate one's own project. So I'm sure there is exhaustion. How do you deal with it?
I'm anxious and I deal with it and I don't deal with it. I'm just, this is not a job. This is a 24/7. It's a state of mind. It's a way of living. It's for me, it's pure luxury because I do what I like. And I don't feel that I'm working, even if I'm working 24/7. So exhausts me, but also defines me. So it's the good and the bad at the same time.
So tell me, how do you decide that your idea is good enough to be translated into a project? How long does it take? Or is there a moment like is there a spark that tells you, yes, now just launch it and propose it and work on it?
Yeah, it's never a one-way process. Actually, I have some ideas which stay with me and grow during the years. Some of the exhibitions are really the result of thinking and meetings and relation over the years, friendships that I very much cultivate with artists. When do they take form of exhibition? When the occasion is right. So sometimes by talking with an artist, there's a connection with, a venue that you can propose a project. Sometimes are the patrons that ask you. So it's really a combination of different factors. It's never me deciding I want to do this, but it's a world of different events that kind of find the way of coming together. Sometimes it takes years, sometimes it's something very quick, but never depends just on me.
So when things they don't work or function according to your timeline, according to your planning or expectation, and it happens at the most unpredictable space and time and phase of your life, what is your approach towards that happening?
What is my, excuse me?
Approach, like how do you deal with it?
When things don't happen as I planned,
or if they happen too soon, or if they happen too late, then the restlessness or the anxiety of waiting for it, or not just simply not being ready, because there's so many times in our creative fields, in our creative processes, things often they don't function according to our minds and what the world is inside our brains, right? So how do you deal with that?
I am learning slowly that you need to lose the complete control of things.
Yes.
And let really things mature so that you can really give the form that they need to have. When a project comes out, meaning that it's not just mine anymore. So it's really a question of control, maybe, okay? I have some idea, I have some thoughts, and these thoughts are developing over time by the meetings that I do, by the exhibitions that I see, by what happens around me. For example, now I think we are in an enormous moment of change and crisis. I mean, that I would never have expected to live 10 years ago, okay? We really are going through a very different phase. And I am questioning myself on how is this going to affect the art world and my practice, okay? So I'm working a project now at IED with the curatorial practice course, which we do always an exhibition. And we are asking ourselves, what is the form of time now? So what is the form of our time? Meaning, what are the questions that we need to ask ourselves? It's a time of crisis, of resistance. What is the forms of art, the material, the forms that change, and what kind of language art restitute to us? So I think the best exercise you can do when things don't go your way is be very open to the others. These projects do not exist alone. It's not a solitary voice, never. So you just need to be in constant flux with the ideas and with the people so that they can find a form that really goes beyond you.
Mm-hmm. So in order to inculcate all of these ideas, to think about these things mentally, because I think half of the work and majority of the hard work is inside your mind. And oftentimes, in the creative processes, the research phase is much longer than the execution phase. You spend a longer period of time thinking about it, even if you don't open a book or you don't scribble anything, you don't draw, but just constantly thinking and observing. And especially, like you said, in an atmosphere, in a society where there's constant flux all the time, where there's one thing that has been launched and then there are 10 different options or faces of versions of it the next day. So when it comes to your practice, your creative practice, how do you live in such an atmosphere? Because it takes a lot of hard work, it takes a lot of resilience to remain who you are and to stick to your core and your methods. But it seems like the methodology has to change according to the change in time. As you said, there's resistance, there's rebellion, there's retaliation, there's reaction, there's a sensory overload around us. So you being the creator of your projects or creator of these concerns, how do you live in an atmosphere, and how do you mold your methodology accordingly?
I am learning as time passes not to follow the fashionable trends. Okay, so not because everyone is working on a specific theme. And actually, so the constant flux, it's something that for me, it's a surface that tells me some directions, but I cannot follow all the threads. And I do not want, because I fully believe that we cannot be, skilled in everything that's happening, knowing what's happening all over the world and having a voice for all these things, because the world is and reality are too complicated and too layered. So the flux, now I try to take myself away from this infinite news and ideas, and because I find that they are much more superficial and going to the direction of homologation and keywords that become something that do not define anything, does not define anything, but just puts everyone on a very homogeneous ground, which I don't like. I prefer to follow my own very deep urgencies. So I try to go away from the constant flux.
So what does your process look like? So let's say there's a project you're working on, which is very close to your heart, not something which is academic or something which is draining you and which does not have any heart or soul, but something that's purely close to your heart. It could be a project of your own student, someone you are very closely connected with. So what is that process like? Can you please let us know?
Okay, the process is conversations, is taking notes, is reading books. And I'm very chaotic when I read, because I kind of never finish one thing. So each time there is an important idea in a book that I think I analyzed in a deep way. Sometimes I just leave it there and go to the next influence that book brought me. Not because I don't finish the book, because I go back then and finish, but I try to compose a fresco from a lot of fragments. And these fragments are visual and written. So they are happenings with real people. They are little sketches that I can have for ideas that come to my mind when I'm mind mapping, readings and taking notes. I have a lot of little notebooks that are one for this, one for that, and then they merge. I pile books. No, I buy a lot of books and
Yes.
pile them.
Mm-hmm.
And read them and then leave them and then read them again and then maybe write about the book, but nothing finished. Usually a process is something that is unfinished. No? Then when it comes to a more mature phase, I try to, come out from this very chaotic procedure and find, a concept and some directions to follow more accurately.
Mm-hmm. So during that process, what are those feelings that guide your process, that guide your curiosity?
Well, intuition, I mean, I have some ideas which are, intuition that I feel in my body. I think there is always this conjunction between something that it cannot be something just academical for me.
Mm-hmm.
An art exhibition has a part which is conceptual and a part that needs to be physical. And before it becomes physical through the work of the artist, it's physical in me. So I kind of really feel it in my body. I feel if I'm working on autobiographical, rewriting of history from the female perspective, obviously I start, from my personal history and what I can share that can go beyond me. If I'm working on, ecological or equilibrium between man and nature, I always start from an experience that I have in space, dealing with. So I use my ideas and my intuition, and I use my body as a measure.
So it's also I'm getting it's very theatrical. There's a lot of drama in it. There's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of scenes and panning
I'm Sicilian, I'm Sicilian.
Yes.
And so the Greek ancient drama, it's in me.
So what's an ideal state or environment for your best performance?
That's a very difficult question because it really depends on what you're working on and the phases of life. I have a project, a very kind of experimental project, which is a summer school that I do with a friend in Sicily, an artist, and another friend who's a teacher. And that school in Sicily in July, the group work that we do with the artist usually really brings out a perfect equilibrium and combination. And there, it's a project that runs, this is, I think, the seventh year, never failed. And it's a very destructured, pedagogical approach, nomadic, using the city, walking around through the eyes of an artist, and having a group experience that goes beyond the individual and arrives at some kind of restitution at the end of the couple of weeks of workshop. That place, so Palermo, and that moment through the eyes of the artist, it's usually my ideal time. And this is one of the reasons why the three of us really hold to this project, because it's, it's something that feeds us for the whole year. We do a lot of things in our professional life, but that moment, it's kind of the apex of creativity and working together and, best performance somehow, because it really comes out.
It's a time of recharging your batteries.
Yes.
So in that project, when there's so many artists and they're showing you Palermo through their lenses and through their observations and their thinking, how has it ever changed your vision and view about Palermo? Or has it ever reconstructed or sort of completely changed the impression of the city that you've spent your lives in?
Completely, it does. And this is the way and the reason why we do it, because we invite the people that we like and that we want to work on, because we want to relive the city through different eyes. And actually, the experience that we had every year changes forever the perception that I have of my city. So I walk through places and I do things that are forever tied to what I did with the artists that we invited for the summer school, for sure.
So as a curator, and I strongly believe in this contemporary art world, the service that a curator does or gives is immense and so useful for all of us artists as well, visual artists or creators of every single person, every single field. So how did you realize that your contributions in the contemporary art world would be beneficial for yourself?
How did I realize? It was a struggle. For many years, I thought that I couldn't say anything that was worth it, because when you begin, you try to find ideas that are worth it to say, because obviously the visual language and the people that work in the art spheres, it's, they are a lot, it's centuries and centuries. So the first question you ask yourself is, what could I add to all these discourse?
How could I make it better?
How could I make it better? Then you realize that it's an awareness of you, the ideas and the people involved with you that changes your life and the one that have experience of the exhibitions you do and the project that you do together. So once you realize that everything, every choice that you make changes the direction of how you perceive the world and that nothing is neutral, then you understand that it's very important also for you. I mean, it's not just repeating things that have been said, but it's something that grows in a collective awareness through the particular eyes of the artists, the curators. So it's kind of growing and growing the awareness of a collective authorship. This is what I like. No, it's not just my idea. It's my idea. I believe in the things that I do and they are strongly mine, but I'm never alone. Okay. Yeah. So the projects are always co-worked, co-curated, co-thought, no?
Yes,
co-lived, co-experienced. And in this sense, you understand how beneficial this is to you, because the space of relation is the space that can change the position of the persons in the world.
Yes, and also because it's something that does not prioritize ego and being someone on a higher level or a higher priority level. And so to break that ladder, to break that classification that I know better and you don't know that, and to come on a ground where you share and exchange views and opinions, you listen and then you speak, and vice versa. So it's something which is so beneficial for every single person. So as a curator, how do you integrate art with cultural and social criticism? Because in the beginning, like you said, and also you are an academic, you have been a part of a lot of numerous artistic projects. And most of the students that you had or have, they do work on current social issues, or they talk about their own personal traumas or societal traumas or historical traumas or memories. And so how, in your opinion, how do you integrate art as a language, as a tool, with cultural criticism?
Well, I think art is always political. I might say this very strong thing. I think art is always, it doesn't have to be any propaganda of anything, okay? Yes, it doesn't have to be openly political, but to do art and also to be a curator is to take a position, okay? The position is taken through the formal language of art and can address openly social issues or just be the manifestation of very antique roots or techniques. Even that, I think it's, taking a position and having a political part, because we do what we are and who we belong to.
Yes.
No? So for me, it's not a matter of inserting social issues into art. It comes natural, you know, it's kind of the way it is. It's nothing that I want to force into. If I work with an artist that, I don't know, maybe she works in ceramic and uses clay and works with just natural elements of earth and, you know, creates this creature that come from the woods that she lived near to and brings this women practice and objects, no? Vessels of things that happen in the everyday life through the creatures that she brings. This, for me, is already a social issue of the way she lives, of the material that she uses, of the fact that she is marginalized maybe in a mountain community that wants to, you know, talk of another equilibrium. So you don't need to be openly political in any sense, but the way you are, witness, no? Roots, materials, and ideas that you bring. So it's through poetry and art.
Yes.
Selection of time, what do you mean by?
Any time or any era or
Oh, time and era.
Mood of a culture, any culture that has inspired, any mood that has inspired your process the most?
It depends on the moment of my life, I would say. Right now, I am trying to look things through some archaeological fragments that go back in the Greek time and in the Greek time where Sicily was part of the Greek area.
Okay.
I've been very much inspired by the whole Middle Ages time in literature. You know, you could go from Dante to many other major poets. Obviously, the whole 20th century, no, in terms of novels, deepening, you know, relation with conscience, with the self, through theater, through art, clearly, and through literature a lot. I am now very much interested, but this is not something I know, and it's something that I need to understand from the artists that I meet, and mostly also from the young artists, students that I meet. It's, you know, cultures which are not Mediterranean, so not what I have known and what I have in my DNA. My DNA, it's a very mixed thing, because being Sicilian, I've been dominated by everyone, you know, Phoenici, Greeks, Romans, Arabs, Normans, French, Spanish, you know, a lot of people ruled the island.
Yes.
And I think I have, and I'm grateful actually, you know, I have a very particular positions on cultural appropriation. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to mix the roots, to create layering, you know, of very different cultures, because they bring syntheses that are usually unexpected. So the whole Sicilian story for sure is an inspiration for me, because what I don't like is to be monolithic, okay, to have like one source of inspiration and that's it, because I think also in the creative process, if you always reflect on the same thing and have the only origin of inspiration, then there's nothing else to say, okay? So feeding yourself for very different origins, which is what I come from, okay? I come from a territory that's been really crossed by a lot of different thinking, okay? And this different thinking fed me to what I am now.
And what were the influences in your creative process? Are there any certain figures, any icons, any subjects, movements that influence your practice largely?
Okay, I'm discovering lately, let's say, I've been working on some projects more on the feminist side. So I understood that I write my curatorial pieces, including my position. Okay, so from a very autobiographical point of view. To do so, so to lose the critical distance that usually academic writing has been for me a real conquer. Okay, I very much appreciate not having a critical distance. I need to know, I need to understand, obviously, but I want to be involved. And the more that I realized that I like to tell things from my perspective, the more that I understood that this has been a feminist practice since, at least in the West, the 70s. And I have been discovering a lot of thinkers and curators and art critics who, starting from their experience, revolutionized the idea of art writing. You know, opening up to dialogue, recomposing dialogues, or including the experience of life, which is my main core. Okay, so if I have to recall, like Carla Lonzi, or I invited for a project that I did last year, I invited a contemporary writer. She's British. Her name is Rachel Cusk, for example. She's a novelist.
Yes.
And she writes from, do you know her?
Yes, I read her books.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
Yes.
And I met her and I invited her because I had, you know, she writes from a very autobiographical point of view,
Yes.
but she crosses so many lives, no? So I read a trilogy besides her more autobiographical book on maternity or her marriage. But there's a trilogy that she wrote, which is written from her perspective, so a writer that meets the other. And she always gives voice to the others. So the protagonists of these three books are all the people that she meets. And this is really what I do, okay? I do it with the artist. I do it with the conversation that I have and with the works that we create together through the exhibition. So I was working in this project with some artists. The project was called Life and Her Stories, Autobiography as Dialogue. And one of the this project was a conversation with Rachel Cusk. So my idols and my references change, and you know, they change according to the phase of life. Now I'm studying a lot autobiographical writing because I think that art is not a separated experience. So art and life are one. And I need to find all the references in this. I don't like to look to things just in a formal way. I don't like just a formal analysis. I think it's not responding to all the urgencies of an artwork. So everything that I can find on this big topic, from autofiction to, you know, from movies to art that include the life of people, is for now beneficial to my growth.
That's wonderful. And as speaking with you and also being under your mentorship, there's this major realization that you always live in the moment, you live in the present. And your practice, the way you conduct your lessons, the way you converse with a troubled mind of a student, of a creative individual, is how you base your answers and your responses and reactions to the present life. And so tell me, in your creative process, obviously, like for every creative individual, there's a weight of past and a weight of the future. For instance, in the past, you know, the things that have been done, you know, the articles that have been written, the mementos that have been passed, manifestos that have been made, and you know, they have to be the core of your research and your observation. And then you have the future, where your creative contributions are going to be highlighted, or the effect that they're going to have on the future world. How do you do this? How do you just stay mentally present? How do you focus, and how do you put such immense amount of significance in being present and focusing on what you're doing now? Because in all of the answers that you've just given to me, there's been this very important element of being present. Whatever your thought process is, your methodology is, it is informed by the current situation. What are the movements that are present in the current life, and then everything is informed by how you change presently. So how do you do this? How do you meditate? Is there therapy? Is there a method? How do you constantly remind yourself that you have to be present? You don't have to dwell in the past or think about the future. It has to be present.
I do dwell into the past and think about the future. I constantly do it. And I know I don't meditate. I would love to do it, but I've never been able. I'm too anxious for that. I'm too Western for that. I always invite people that can do it to just, be present, actually. By an author, a French author, which I like very much, Emmanuel Carrère. He wrote a book that it's called Yoga, okay? This is his last novel. In Yoga, he tells about, it's very autobiographic, and he tells about his experience in going in a meditation workshop, okay, for like a weekend. So the experience of being present and letting go and, conform also to ideals which are not his own. And the book is all this continuous struggle. So how am I present? It's just a continuous struggle. I am continuously pulled by my origins, by my past, and by the ideas that structured me from the very, very beginning of my education process. But I get bored of things that are just closed in their own time, and I think that art is one of the marvelous things that it's there to be looked. So the gaze of us present beings is what gives significance. Yes. So since this is what I do and I engage with art is always something that you look again and again and again. So the drawing that I'm seeing behind you gives me feelings that for sure are very different from the ones that I had years ago when we're together. Together, okay? So the presentness is the awareness of a significance that always, changes. But at the same time, I never forget my roots. This needs to be clear. I'm not floating on nothing. I'm very anchored. I am very, very, very aware of where I come from and what are my roots. And this is also my interest for the other. This is why it surprises me, because it really, every time something different comes out to my eyes and I get surprised, it's like, oh, okay, I see this thing different from me. And at the same time, I recognize how I could never have thought something like this, but somehow resonates. So the marvel, the empathy, and then I'm really optimistic, actually. So I really think that there is always a space to have a real relation. Yes. I don't think that things have to go, are already determined, okay? I always think that things can change.
So what emotions and responses do you hope to create with your work?
Awareness. I think it's one of the things that I marvel. I would like when people see the things I do, the exhibition, the things I like when they remain marveled and suspended. No? Not everything is clear. I don't think that an exhibition that tells you everything is successful. Art is something that always needs to stay open.
Yes.
So Marvel, awareness of you having that experience. No? So placing yourself in a time and in a tying, a lot of threads. I don't know what other emotions. Sometimes I've been told that it's clear when I do something, in an exhibition. Oh yes, I can see you did it, because it's kind of harmonic and elegant, but it's kind of poetic. It's never so assertive. It's never so didactical. I don't like that. So these things.
So they say artists, creators, and authors, and people from different creative backgrounds, they often become embodiments of the cities that they had lived in or intimately associated with a particular space. So where do you feel you belong the most?
Yeah. In Palermo.
Palermo.
In a city where nature is like a jungle. Like very recently, like a couple of weeks ago, there was a very bad weather. So in my city of origin, a big tree fell off because it's a tree in the street that I grew up. And it's a very big tree that filled the whole space. So it's like a tunnel, but it's natural from the trees. Okay. So you enter the street, and it's like a tunnel. One of these big trees fell off because they have aerial roots, and they cut it because they would destroy the concrete of the asphalt and the side walks. Okay. So they cut it because, cars and people need to pass by. So the tree didn't have enough roots to anchor itself to the ground. It grew too big, and with a bad weather, it fell off. It took 2 days to take it off the street because it was absolutely huge. And I felt very sad. I felt so connected to that place, to those roots, to the way, in which this wild nature grows and infiltrates every space, every urban space. This kind of nature, this kind of savage, of wild, ancestral thing really belongs to me. And this is something you cannot find in Florence, for example, that has, very ordered way of landscape or geometric organization of space. Renaissance, it's all about geometry.
Yes.
It's all about perspective. It's all about putting things in a specific organization of space.
Yes.
Yeah. So I appreciate, but I don't find myself completely represented by this city, while I do feel myself represented from a city that has many, many layers and roots wherever.
So when I visited, when you planned this trip to Palermo with all of us, which has been a life-changing experience for me, I felt the certain warmth and openness of Palermo, the people of Palermo. It's in the culture. It's like a different culture altogether. So you belonging from Palermo, and then traveling all the way to the north to Firenze, where I felt there was this ice cold nature. There was this very strong and dry approach of people, and it's very silent. It's very different and very opposite to what I had experienced in the South. So you being a creative person, how do you deal with such transition? Because I'm sure you do travel back and forth. So they say the environment and the atmosphere, they have a huge impact on one's mental stability and thought process. So how do you deal with that? What is your formula?
My cure for that, my formula for that is to constantly work with people from all over the world. So let's say exceed the homogeneous context that Florence can offer, because Florence can be a very, very international city too.
Yes.
And so the school I work with, or the artists I work with, or, you know, even my colleagues, you know, we are here in Florence, but let's say 80% of them don't come from the city.
Exactly. Yes.
So it's a good way of staying open. So for me, my formula is to continue to stay open and to, you know, engage with people which are not just rooted here.
It also helps to say that the city is a global city. It's like a global platform.
Yeah.
Charged with tourism, tourism. And I think that was something that had also made it easier for me in the beginning, because having people from different parts of the Europe and not really essentially Florentine, it really helped me understand Florence. It really helped me understand and to not focus on the things which were affecting me, but the things which were added to it or which gave it an extra flavor. So I'm going to ask a very interesting question now. If your creativity had a name, if you had to give it a name, what would it be?
A name?
Yes.
That's hard. I have no idea the name. If my creativity had a name of what? Of something, of I don't know.
It could be like an identity tag, you know? Daria has this creativity. This is its name.
Okay.
And you can't use any curatorial names. I mean, no formal names.
No.
It has to be creative, and I know you can come up with something interesting.
Okay, on the spot, I actually don't really know what to answer, because the only thing that really comes to my mind is the idea of relation. So if my creativity would have a name, is, you know, relational or relations, or, you know,
I think that's
something
great.
like this.
That's great. So tell me, which area of your creative process do you lack the most, where you still feel like you need to work on it constantly?
The structure. I am too open-ended. So even if my idea is clear in my mind, it takes me a lot of steps to arrive to a clear statement, a clear, you know, a clear essay that it's, you know, done. I work and rework the things over and over. So I would like to be more structured, in sense of more, I don't know, more definite in some of the ideas. And I know, it's both ways.
It's both ways, because you know, if you have that very strict structure in your work, then that's going to change who you are, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Because you are a very free-spirited person, and you are a low-maintenance person. Like you adapt and adjust easily amongst a crowd, and there's no structure to it.
I know, but that's also my worst, you know, that's the things that I lack most. No?
So do you
Sometimes I would need to be more straight and more
selectively,
clear, more rigid. Yes. Yeah.
So do you have a framework to effective goal setting in life? Is there
what do you mean?
Like, for instance, if you have a goal, you need to achieve that goal, and in order to achieve that goal, there has to be an effective process, effective framework. Do you have anything that leads you to have an effective setting to work towards a goal or to work towards a project? What are the things and the areas where you focus the most?
Okay, I go from the general to the particular, okay? If I have an idea, I know that I expand first to then find the lines of research that I'm most interested in. I expand also in trying to understand what kind of artists, what kind of works, what kind of relations can nurture that idea, and then select and try to be more specific. Then so it's from the big to the small. So my pattern goes there. Then when I am getting to work on the specific lines, I always need to expand again. But this is a process that I cannot do alone. I do it, with the artist. So first I have an idea, and this idea is vague and, multiform. Then my idea grows and finds a form. Then I reach out for people that I can elaborate that idea more. And so with my core, I go to the people and establish the relations that will help me. Then my idea, it's not anymore something that it's self-sufficient, because it needs the support of the artist, so grows even more. So from general to particular to general.
Makes sense. So in every creative process, there are always moments where you are totally burnt out. You are completely exhausted. There's a breakdown. There's a physical breakdown. There's a nervous breakdown. There's an emotional breakdown. How do you disconnect from all of that?
I just do other things. I concentrate on, physical work. I don't work with art projects. I mean, sometimes you just need, I don't read. I just, made a void, try to, void my mind and just let things happen without me controlling them at all. So just living the normal everyday, from family to whatever relations, not looking for anything specifically going toward art. And from that period, usually I feed myself again to then being able to elaborate an idea that can bring to an art project. So I get away from art, actually, but then art comes in again. I mean, it's always a mutual exchange. But I do a lot of stupid things. I mean, from whatever things that it's not clearly intellectual or directed toward a specific process. I go to the gym, I walk, I swim, I invite people to dinner, I stay a lot with my daughters, which is something that I always do, obviously every day, but, concentrating much more
on yourself.
Instead of, yeah.
So what is the question you wish people asked more from you?
The question that I'd like people to ask,
that's a deep one.
Yeah, I don't know. Because it really depends on the time period, on the stage of the life. I mean, in my first exhibitions, I don't know, 20 years ago, I thought each project was a world apart, okay? So the questions were related to that particular project. The more that I grow, the more that I realize that it's a whole thing. So my personality really expresses through the things that I do. So there is a red line that crosses a lot of the projects. So the question is, it's really related to how deep can someone get to know me through the things that I do. Okay, it's art and art curation for me, it's not just, you know, an exhibition on a topic, which doesn't, you know, concern me at all.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, I'd like to ask the last question, which I wished wasn't the last, but because of the time constraint, there's this one last thing I'd like to ask you. If I ask you to give 3 positive affirmations to yourself right now, what would they be?
3 positive affirmations.
To Daria Filardo. Yes.
To Daria Filardo. I think that I am empathic. I think that's a very positive thing that I think of. That I am optimist, no? That I always think that things can get better and can change. That I'm very dialogic. No? Dialogue for me is the most essential thing. So these 3 qualities. No, dialogic can be also that I'm anxious, you know, I talk and talk, but you can see the positive side. Empathic means also that I am too much in the lives of the people that I cross. Okay, so
because you live their lives, because when you meet
I
them,
lose my center. Sometimes
you start living their lives.
Yeah. And so this is also, you know, can be a negative thing, but it's a good thing in terms of, you know, understanding and being open to what the other gives to you.
Yes.
And so,
and also,
for a curator, this means that an artist can, you know, really bring their own thing, and I can take them. No.
Yes. Thank you so much,
Alina. Thank you. This was
I have no words to explain
fantastic.
how fantastic this has been for me, for my state of mind, and to connect with you. I mean, after all those years, why did we never do Zoom before?
I don't know.
But we
always
stayed connected. I never felt like I've left Italy. I never felt like I've left your mentorship. Whatever has happened in my life, I've always carried your guidance with me. And to start something on my own and to do this, you have a great deal of impact and contribution in that, and I thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm really honored, and I really want to thank you. Want to thank everyone that was, you know, listening. Say hi to Koyal, that I see her name.
Yes.
Because it's really always an open dialogue that never ends. So,
absolutely. And I hope it never ends. I hope there's no structure to it.
No, it won't. It won't never end.
Thank you so much. And I hope it has given you that joy, that warmth, and that I have no words. I just hope that it has given you a moment of relaxation in your life to think about questions which usually aren't asked on a daily basis. And I hope that you stay amazing, that you keep rocking what you're doing, and your contributions mean a lot to us. Thank you so much. Not just in the West, but this part of the world as well.
I hope I can come soon. That would be my really wonderful thing to do.
We will reunite again. But thanks to Zoom for this.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you. I hope to have another. Grazie. I hope to have this conversation again, something even more exciting, and we get to see where we've evolved.
Yes. Thank you.
I love you
very, very much.
Ciao.
Ciao.